Good morning, chess fans. Max Murray here, your host for the Max Murray Show, broadcasting to you from my basement battle bunker along the shores of the mighty Mississippi River here in the Show Me State of Missouri. I'm going against the bot Arthur, rated 1700 from Wales. Working my way through the chess.com bots, the so-called advanced bots. They start at a 1500 level and go up to 2100 level. There are 20 of them. I'm playing my usual opening system, d2, d4, followed by knight to f3, e2, e3, bishop to e2, and castles. Spoiler alert. If an early challenge were to come, like a Benoni on move 1 from Black, I've studied this and decided that my response is I'll break from my normal 5-move order, and instead of playing 2 knight to f3, I will play 2 e3. Anyway, we shall proceed. This is weird. Arthur's playing poorly in the opening. E3 against the d-pawn could lead to an Imzo-Indian. This move immediately suggests there could be a problem in the CPU. Wires are crossed, a moth got in there. Something, the motherboard has fritzed out, something. But now, queen d7 on move 3, blocking in the dark squared bishop, is confirmation. It's not even particularly easy for Black to evacuate the queen side and castle, if that is indeed the computer's intention. Despite all that, I'm not going to try and punish Black's opening play. Instead, I will get into my setup, where here it is. It's the Yusupov-Rubinstein variation, or sometimes called the Colley variation by the chess computer. I can proceed by fianchettoing the bishop to the dark square diagonal, thusly, and exchanging off this d-pawn to open the long dark square diagonal when Black plays either c5 or e5, or I can play c4, which is what I'm going to do, which is kind of my mainline mode of development. Now the c-pawn is freed up, and my knight can develop to c3 without blocking that pawn and stifling it on the c2 square, constipating it. Now we do have d5. The Black has somewhat normalized his opening operations, except the queen grossly misplaced, blocking this dark squared bishop, as I've already noted. He does gain an extra grip on the b4 square, which I can thwart and gain space, thusly by playing a3 and b2, b4. The question now is, how do I deploy my dark squared bishop in my system? Usually it's going to come to b2 after I play b3. It can on occasion, but usually in response to very specific circumstances, my dark squared bishop will deploy to the d2 square. Once again, I'm going to continue in my mainline fashion. My only issue is Black seems to have an interest in this b4 square based on this battery. And my mainline move, b2, starts to weaken the dark squares just a tad on that side of the board, but I'm not afraid of it. We're going to continue. Okay, I support this central pawn. He has come into b4 as not feared, but as anticipated. I can defend in two different ways, with the dark squared bishop or with the queen on c2. Queen on c2, a very good developmental square for the queen. Sometimes she can find prey down the c-file. It's often not feasible because Black can play bishop f5, so she can be a little unstable on that route. Also, Black often proceeds in the early middle game, in the process of connecting the rooks, to move the a8 rook to c8 and the queen is on the end of that rainbow. So c2, a little double-edged. It is an active move. I can kick the queen and chase her and gain space, a lot of it, on the queen side if I want, and that is one of the main strategic motifs of this strong king side opening. I secure my king side and then proceed to gain space on the queen side. The space gives me winning chances. Okay, so concretely, where do I want to put the bishop? Because the knight is on c6, it's unlikely that he's going to be able to play the break c7, c5, which means my d-pawn is likely to stay here for a long time, particularly since I control the other break, e5, which means my bishop on b2, fianchettoed, is going to be blunted by my own pawn, perhaps for a considerable amount of time. This creates an immediate threat against the queen to win a pawn like this and smash up his queen side next, or try to. Bishop is always not quite as well placed on d2, unless again there was a specific reason. Also, I want to play a3 next. And with black leading with its chin right here, this battery leads with the queen. That a3 is even more playable. We're going to play the bishop classically. We're going with my classic development. Oh yeah, I didn't pay attention to this. The bishop itself is loose on b2. Sure, the knight was loose on c3, but the bishop itself was loose on b2. It's these unusual moves. That's my alarm. Just one moment, please. These unusual moves. I'm playing too quickly, and when your opponent makes an unusual move, it behooves one to actually sink one's teeth into the ramifications, because as bad as queen to e7 looked, blocking in the dark squared bishop, there is these opportunities. I'm going to have to recapture with the bishop, since pawn takes pawn loses the bishop. The dark square bishop, he's going to take space now. He outspaced me. So it looks like he's this unusual move, queen e7 and then queen to b4, is paying dividends. The bishop's going to have to retreat. I can relocate to d3 comfortably, and that may be in the cards, but now likely the light squared bishop for black is going to develop on the b7 square, where it can exchange itself from my f3 knight on the king side, a key defender of my king's castle position, and potentially shatter my pawn formation. Also, it would tether the queen to the defense of the knight, which the queen wants to be free range. I also want my queen on c2. Notice the drawback is black has a backwards c-pawn, and the c-file itself is looking a bit shaky. I will play conservatively, having already been upset once by this move, queen to b4, and the exchange on my c4 square, preventing the pawn recapture, which is the normal play. I do have an half-open c-file, so it's kind of worked out to my benefit. Serendipitously, the queen has come to d6. She's eyeing the h7 pawn. Not a worry at this time, because it's covered by my knight. I can ultimately and always blunt this whole b8 to h2 diagonal by playing g3, and bring my light squared bishop to defend the weakened light squares after g3, or even the queen sometimes. Queen d3, often a very powerful move in my opening system, where she is on two key diagonals. I can continue playing on the queen side. His king is in the center. The bots at this low level, 1500s, the 1600s, and now even the 1700 Arthur from Wales, is not getting his king to safety. suggesting a robust and muscular response in the center is in the cards for white. I think I might want to play it with put some firepower behind central breaks first by playing queen c2 and complete my development connecting the rooks, placing one on the c file and one on the d file, and then it's going to be bombs away at that point, either e3, e4, or potentially a d4, d5 immediately. If I can get in d5 in my system, it usually means I'm ahead, that I've got a good position. This is a hole on c5. If black plays b4 to try and disturb my knight will relocate to a4 and via that route to c5, which is a brilliant perch for the knight, and would interdict the light square bishop developing to b2. Currently I can't make that maneuver because the key squares to get to c5, that perch, that highly desirable perch, are not available. Notice the queen is blocking the dark squared bishop from covering that square itself. Queen c2. You see, I spoke it into existence. I'm going to respond instantly a la Blitz. Now the light square bishop has presented itself as a target. Also, the a6 pawn is now a target for my light square bishop, which had been biting on granite with the pawn construction on b5 and a6. I now need to become tactically aware of potential sacrifices on this long light square diagonal. But first we're going to get the knight firmly into the game. Now we're going to double up on the c file. This knight is now under a threat, and there may be a tactic right now. Okay? I may have a tactic right now. Finally, black has played the dark square bishop to a developmental square on e7, a classic square for the bishop in any d-pawn style opening. Black often going with a symmetrical d5, e6, knight f6, bishop e7, and castles. The mirror analog, the mirror reflection of my setup. That's a standard black setup. In fact, that's one of the things that inspired me to adopt this particular opening, which still lacks a name. I call it my opening in my notes. It's also known as the Yusupov-Rubinstein variation, apparently, and even sometimes misnamed the Kali. So this knight is loose. I have to be careful if I sacrifice this knight of a counter-sacrifice. But I have a lot of ways to juice my particular sacrifice, which, for instance, is here, knight takes pawn, and that's the move that comes out to me. So let's think it through. Knight takes pawn. The threat is to drop the queen, right, into the knight and displace that knight from the board. As in, take it off. Chop wood, as chess players like to say. If the counter-sacrifice comes against my queen, with black playing knight takes pawn, then I can simply, among other potential moves, play knight takes knight, and I'm up a piece. I have a check here, which is an accelerator move, since black would have to respond. And I also have the backwards c7 pawn at the end of the rainbow, which is another check and serves to fork the rook and the king together. Not sure what the refutation is here, if any. It doesn't look like it's any. I'm just going to win a pawn. And I do maintain this bite. He's going to cover it. Now there's a pawn fork in the cards, but unfortunately the e4 square is uncovered. This move is coming. Up the material equivalent of a pawn, I would argue this is a winning position for white due to this backwards c pawn and my dominance on the c file. However, black is going to get piece activity. And without being able to strike immediately in the center, I can't take advantage of the vulnerabilities of these two pieces. So I might play bishop d3. It's looking like perhaps bishop d3 was the better move when I was forced to make the retreat. Remember, I had to recapture on c4 with my bishop, and then I got bumped by the pawn on b5 and had to relocate my bishop, and I very quickly decided just to bring it back to e2 to play ultra solid and ultra safe. However, the second time I moved that bishop in my opening, very often it needs to go to d3, particularly if it's not, and it wasn't, and it still isn't, opposed by a bishop on the b1 to h7 diagonal. I do have what's called the pinwheel, a typical motif of mine where I move the knight to d2 and then I pinwheel my bishop to the f3 square, and that's how I deal with black's monster bishop on the long light square diagonal. The other advantage of starting the pinwheel is it gets the knight out of danger along this light square diagonal and prepares e4. So I'm going to go for pinwheel, but then probably the light square bishop is going to come to b7. I'm going to have to retreat the knight, maybe back to c2. Black will have a move. If he's smart, perhaps he'll castle, but there could be some other positional priorities. Then I pinwheel. The bishops are exchanged. I still haven't advanced my central pawn majority. I'm outnumbering him entirely in the center. But I've exchanged off his dangerous light squared bishop. There is this ganging up on my h7, but with the queens off the board, a whirlwind attack against my castled king, being in a solid position as it is not a particular danger, and I can simply move the target. Moving targets are hard to hit by pushing the h2 pawn to h3. The more robust way to play this might be bishop to d3, admitting my mistake. We have to sometimes admit to our mistakes. The rook gets chased away, but then the plan becomes to play knight to d2 at that point and e4 without exchanging the long light squared bishop. The concept being, since I control the center, I will be cramping him, and I don't want to get rid of his minor pieces yet. However, this light squared bishop can become a monster, and it does influence important light central squares. And if you are going to play against a pawn majority or pawn dominance in the center like I have, doing it from the flanks with the bishop is the hyper-modern approach to do that. An advantage of playing knight d2 is I can put the knight on c4 next, another hole in his position along the c file, and attack here, but I will not have to be careful about burying my rook and not having an escape. So I have a number of moves. I have a number of ideas. Is there any way I can take advantage of the situation? Not really. I think I need to get these pieces into the game. This bishop simply can't sit here passively defending the knight any longer. So we're going with this plan, which I think is as good as any. That's a bit of a surprise. So after all that talking, instead of coming to the long light square diagonal, the bishop has come to the more classical style of chess, not the hyper-modern square on b7, but instead the classical square on d7, where it now watches two diagonals, but has less influence in the center. I think it's a positional mistake, honestly. He needed to try to neutralize my central pawn majority with piece pressure in the center, and possibly a break at some time against it, either f5 or c5, but he's not going to get that. You could get c5 in. I'm sort of okay doing that. My rooks are going to cover it. Got to move back. The thought was to put the rook on the second rank, where it provides more additional defense to my king, but more importantly, can be reunited with its brother rook on the c file, putting pressure on c7, and then moves against that bishop by this knight have even more force. So, yep. Okay, he's voluntarily offering the exchange of light squared bishops. He took 2 moves to do it, but on the other hand, my bishop has been wandering about, a little bit lost, like a sheep. Now with light squared bishops, you wander around like a lost sheep. Immediate and obvious problem for black. Bishop takes bishop, doubles the pawn, but it does allow for instant development of the a8 rook and a target on a2. Fortunately, like I said, I brought my rook back to the 7th, where I am protecting that second rank. Something to pay of note here is this is actually a pin. The bishop is pinned and cannot move away without me dropping the exchange. Let's go ahead and take that. We're just going to gain some more positional trumps. I have to defend this pawn. I can do that by moving the rook all the way from f1 to a1. It was a rook that started, remember, on h1, so the rather humorous chess. There's quite a lot of humor in chess sometimes. The humorous bit of irony is the h1 rook will end up on the a1 square, and fairly early in the game on move 20. It's move 21 actually. A takes b5 was move 21. This rook, though, is not happy defending this pawn. If I play here, I'm undoubling, but I am exchanging more pawns off. However, the grip on these dark squares is the story for black thus far this game. Very difficult for me to do a long-term defense of this pawn, because I want to mobilize my rooks. I may have to give up this pawn at a certain point, and then there will be the infiltration of the dark rook with counterplay. I can drop the rook back to a1, the bishop, sorry. The bishop can do the a1 work instead, remaining on this long dark square diagonal and supporting my center. I could relocate the bishop to the d2 square in a more classical old Indian type situation where it is attacking a vulnerable b pawn. However, dark square bishop against dark square bishop, and black has the advantage. Black has a much better bishop if I put my bishop on d2, despite the fact that I'm attacking this pawn. I get into trouble though when I play bishop a1. It comes up quite a lot in my opening system because I am often foreshadowing this dark squared bishop, and you'd be surprised how often a move like bishop b2, bishop a1 becomes a candidate. One game I got my bishop buried decked and it was very embarrassing. If I do put my bishop on a1, I'm also foregoing the opportunity of trying to extricate my queen side by an eventual a2, a3 break. But do I really want to get into this Vietnam-like quagmire of my a2 pawn? Or do I want to get into the fireworks, the big show? Okay? The big show of central pawn majority. I would really like to get my d pawn in a position to be able to advance to d5, a key move in the position, because it could become a defended pass pawn right directly in the center, very powerful. Or it could be exchanged for black c pawn, meaning these double pawns are now isolated, and opening up this long dark square bishop. So we're going to play bishop a1. Not clear if that's the best move. Very often the computer says it is not. Perhaps the idea now is to double rooks on the a file. It's going to take him a move or two to do that. I don't really necessarily disagree with a lot of what he's doing. Wanted to double on the c. This bishop, though, too much of a problem. I'm going to go here and play for advancing these central pawns. I'm going to leave the knight where it is, defending the d pawn, but it's not the knight really wants to come here too. The knight says, what about going to the center? If this bishop comes off, the whole house of cards comes down. There is a best move in this position. This position feels like there's a better plan than others. Sometimes one plan is almost as good as another, but this one feels like I need to make an accurate move. Probably I should have gone for this. Probably should have done this and listened to my intuition. Could have doubled up on that pawn, then I could have been patient, eventually bringing my knight to attack here, and this pawn would fall. You know, perhaps patience instead of rushing into wanting to advance the central pawns. I cannot play this d5 move now, and I'm a little afraid he's going to play here with his c7 pawn. He's going to get this break in. I want to stop that break. So if I want to stop the break, I have to play rook d to the d file, then push d4, d5. That takes two moves, and in the meantime, he could just throw this out. He can't really throw it out, though, because I'll take it, then he takes here. Yeah, the black rook on my second rank does look a little frightening, but my king very safe for the time being, and I will eventually create some luft at the proper time so my king can escape potential back rank mate motifs. Rook e1, we're going to get behind the pawns in the center. Yeah, now he castles. He's playing well at this point. He's done quite well considering where he placed his queen in the opening. I did get a pawn, and then I sort of cocooned or turtled quite a bit. This rook is now going to join the adventure, most likely by playing here. I may drop, this pawn may drop, but in the time that I have, what if he doubles? Let's see, doubles rook somehow. I gotta get this going. I gotta get this moving. Okay, it's the center against the side. Center usually wins that race. Here comes the knight. Let's take a look at the hops. Well, there's an attack here, but it's covered on the H7 or H2 square. F2 could be important if black does occupy the second rank. Not really anything happening for this. I'm going to take that moment. It's not particularly loofed at this moment because the black bishop controls that diagonal, but I'm about to shut the whole... I'm about to turn out the lights on this dark squared bishop. The knight can't retreat to H6. Can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. Because when it does, I'm going to do that with force. So let's make the knight uncomfortable. Now we'll piece fork. This is devastating. Nope. Okay, now the house of cards, like I mentioned, does start to come apart for black, and I can absolutely defend the A2 pawn with both my rooks mobile on my second rank. It's over for black at this point. Now it's a matter of technique, as they say. Knight, very, very powerful square on C3. Fortunately covered by my dark squared bishop. I want to get my knight in the game. That's the most obvious way to do it. And attack this pawn. Where would the knight really want to be, though? Attack there. That would be kind of nice, starting to free this situation up. I might just want to try to unhandcuff myself on the queen side. It's now going to be a slog. Let's just move relatively quickly since I'm up a piece. Try to be mindful, though. I go here. He doesn't have time to try to dominate the knight by putting his pawn in E5. So let's go. That's the target. I'm sorry, not that. This. That's the target, the A6. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see. I see what I did. I didn't allow for the proviso that I said before. But I'm going to go ahead and trade pawn for pawn. The central pawn much more important than my A pawn, especially with his two queenside pawns stacked up as they are on the B file like a traffic jam. Any other way to defend this pawn? No back rank mate because he has Luft. I have Luft. Rook can't penetrate because the knight could attack the rook. The rook takes, I take. The rook takes, now it's threatening the bishop. Here we go. Takes. Trades help me. The A1 bishop is under threat by the rook. However, it's defended. And it's also defending my D pawn, and it's also preventing the rook from getting behind my A pawn. And ultimately it can sacrifice itself if black does manage to get one of these pawns rolling. We're ripping at each other like two animals. He's going to attack the A3 pawn thusly. I want to defend it this way. I want to defend it absolutely. If I gobble upon myself and he takes my, then he's got this passed pawn. It's enough, even though he's outnumbered 3 pieces to 2. And I have my own passer. His is closer and of higher quality. My king is far away. Let's defend, just make things a little harder. But first, where is his knight going to go? There is a check. And then there's a capture of this. So, I mean, I do have other resources if I want to get adventurous. That seems very poorly advised, though. I don't. If black is going to recover this game, it's going to be by creating a pass pawn on this side. So we will play very passively at the moment. Okay, now he's going to try and oust. Now, no more pressure here, so my rook is free to move. Takes. This is the next one if I can get to it. Got to go back. It's kind of offering a perpetual, I should say. Knight here. Still want to get pressure. Gotta get this blockading knight out. Here. Now I'm defending that pawn. I gotta get this A bishop out. I gotta get a lot of things out. Okay. Exchange. That's, I think he lost his patience. Now what's he gonna do? This pawn's dead meat. Yep. Come to Papa. Check. Nothing. I got luft. Got behind the pawn, good. But I'm gonna get even more behind the pawn. Now do I run or do I try to defend that? We could play footsies. Oh wait, I assumed he moved to D1. Now I'm seeing, looked at it out of the corner of my eye. I saw the rook fleeting past the corner of my eye, and I assumed he put it on D1, the classic way of putting itself behind a pass pawn. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to run this pawn or this one. If I can't run this one now because he's prevented that, so we're going to run this pawn to D6. Where it's protected by the knight. I could get behind it. If he takes here, he's dead meat. I think this kills him. I think he's dead. And now he's deader than a doornail. He will get to stop this pawn in time. I'm going to shut down everything he's ever hoped and dreamed. I'm going to take everything from him and give him nothing. Yeah, he's going to try and keep things going slow, just for fun. I'm not sure. I haven't checked my Davoradsky. I don't know what happens when I get these two pawns to the 6th rank like this with a construction with an. I don't know if there's checkmate in here or not. That seems pretty defensive. Now, okay, so let's look at this. These two pawns against the king. If I check here, he takes. I move here, he can get back in time to stop either of these. So the king in its position, triangulated in an L shape, a knight's move from my B6 and D6 pawns, does stop it. But I do have a piece to support all these advances. Now he can't stop it. He gets his check here. Queen. Okay, now I want to form the L. The L is creating a knight's move between the king and the queen, and that's how you trap a king without overthinking. The perfect L spot would be here. Can't go here. If I do go here, this square is open. Then I can L him this way. L is probably not the best move in this situation. I want to keep the king in this box. I don't want him running to the center of the board. There's a nice check here while I'm covering his central escape. Or I thought it was a nice check. Perhaps it's not as nice as what I had envisioned. It appears to have been a waste of time. I come back here. I'm still preventing the king, though, from getting to the center. We'll exchange those off. Now I need to be extremely careful because I could stalemate him. I want to allow him to keep a move in his pocket. here is an L this way, followed by this, and I'll run him down like a dog. So we're going to form the L. Probably not the strongest move. I'm going to have to take this. Let's look. Does he have a stalemate? No. I've got to take this because he's going to sneak in a queen himself. Form the L, and it's pinned on the back rank. I'm gonna say check him, but this seems like the cleanest kill. And there we have it. Well done, Max Murray, host of the Max Murray. Computer's just done up a quick evaluation. It says there's one blunder. I'm curious to see what that is. So that's the 1700 bot down. I don't think he played very well. He did have moments, though. Apparently I had a blunder. We're going to have to see what that was all about. Sometimes the blunder is an actual consequential move, but sometimes the blunder is, hey, dummy, you didn't checkmate him this way in 2 moves when you could have, instead you took 3 kind of thing. So we'll check it out. I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Now we're going to move on to the next 1700 bot, Arthur, 1700 from Wales. It was a good game. Thank you very much to my fellow countrymen from Wales. My father was born there. Bye-bye.